just a little bit more. I'm sure you have done a lot of engaging and connecting with people, but let's take this time right now in the chat box and put in where you're joining us from. Now, I've learned that we have people with us from all over the world. I mean, just some close and far distance places. So we want to know where you're joining us from today. And let's see, a second question would be, describe your day in a color. And I think I want to do a third question. What is helping you to get through COVID-19? So we have 3 questions. Where are you joining us from? How would you describe your day in a color? And how have you been coping and getting through COVID-19? So as you continue to share and put your responses in the chat box, I would like to go further and say, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this session, No RX and NAMI Central Texas. We are grateful for their support in helping make this event possible. Thank you. Now we have a few housekeeping rules for our time together. So this is a safe and supportive space. Please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment. Please mute yourself at all times. Please know that we are live on Facebook. Please use the chat function in Whova to interact with other attendees. And for questions for the presenter, please use the Q&A function in Whova. That spot is specifically for all of your questions, and feel free to just fill it up. And every question, any question that comes to your mind, please put it in the Q&A box. And if you feel overwhelmed or need to talk to someone during this session, please call 512-472-4357. I'm gonna repeat that. 512-472-4357. Press 1, then 1 again for immediate emotional support. Someone is waiting for your call, and that's why they are there. Between sessions, you can visit our comfort suite. Doesn't that sound awesome? Our comfort suite, where we provide a safe haven. You'll find the comfort suite in community under the main navigation in Whova. We have a number of surveys. If you register for continuing education credit or CEUs, please check the chat for links. The first link will sign you in for your CEU. So again, the first link will sign you in for your CEU. Please sign in at the beginning of the session. After the workshop, there will be another link for CEU evaluations. Please click on that link for a short evaluation, which also includes the CEU request form. Once you've completed the evaluation, you'll be taken to a page with a link to your CEU certificate. Isn't that just awesome? You get your certificate immediately. So submit that paperwork, do that form, you submit it, and then your certificate will follow. We'll also post a link for the workshop evaluation in the chat, so be looking for that as well. I also need to let you know that we have some great conference merchandise, so be sure to check it out online in our online store at CTAAFSC. Again, that's CTAAFSC.com/shop. I mean, shopping online is so fun these days, right? So we are ready to accommodate your shopping needs as you're part of this conference. So please join me in welcoming our presenters, Relisha Brantley, Rolanda Flakes, and Tara Thomas. Relisha Brantley is a certified family partner with the Juvenile Justice Program at the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. She has worked with numerous school districts, providing families an opportunity to address their children's mental health care needs. She became a certified family partner to help families and give the support that she never received. Rolanda Flakes holds a Master's of Art degree in psychology and is currently a lead peer educator at the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. She has invested the last 21 years serving in faith-based communities, educating, encouraging, and empowering individuals who are overcoming hurt, habits, and hangups, and living with mental health challenges. Tara Thomas is a certified family partner with the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD in Harris County. She is also a parental relationship expert, speaker, and future published author. Tara works with families who struggle with mental health disorders and who are also finding it hard to discover and maintain balance in the home. You can learn more about Relisha, Rolanda, and Tara by reading their bios in Hoover. So now, help me welcome them for this presentation. Thank you. And also, as they are coming forth, I want to remind you, you can begin putting your questions in the Q&A box in Hoover. And we will be back. Once the presentation ends, we'll be back for our Q&A period. Thanks again.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raylisha Brantley, and I'm a certified family partner with the Harris Center. We also have here today Ms. Rolanda Flakes, lead peer educator with the Harris Center, and Ms. Tara Thomas, last but not least, certified family partner with the Harris Center. Today, we're going to be addressing with you guys stigma, barriers to proper mental health education and resources in the African American community. It's a huge stigma in the African American community that Black people don't have mental health issues. Let's see what we can do to demystify the stigma. 1 in 5 African Americans are 20% more likely to develop a mental illness during their lifetime than their white counterparts. It's also said that 1 in 25, the suicide is ranked as the 3rd leading cause of death in Black men from the ages of 15 to the age of 24. A study showed that 63% of African Americans believe that a mental health condition is a personal sign of weakness. And 56% of African Americans believe that depression is a normal sign of aging. African Americans are 21% less likely to utilize mental health services. Stigma is defined a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. Other
uses of the word stigma is shame, stain, dishonor, even blemish. Barrier is defined as a fence or other obstacle that prevents movement or access.
So now let's talk about stigmatization within the African American community and how it can oftentimes be viewed. Shame and embarrassment, how we view ourselves when it comes to mental health. Keeping it private, what's said in this house stays in this house. Labeling how we see ourselves as crazy and different. Some used to say going to the Looney Tune or the crazy house. The misconceptions that goes with stigmatization, being judged by appearance based on socioeconomic status. If it's on a high end, it's viewed as they shouldn't have it. That's only for those that's on a lower socioeconomic end of the income. And it's like they deserve it, you know. That's where they come from, or that's how they live. Also, pride is a huge stigmatization within the African American community. So now let's examine how we can address the stigma. We can start by changing our narrative and the way we speak about mental health. We also can remove the shame. We also can be conscious of the language we use and how we speak about mental health concerns, and who's listening to us and the impact it will have on their experience. Also showing some compassion and empathy towards those who are living with mental health, and being honest about our experience, about the treatment, the things that we experience. We also can remove self-stigmas, the way we view mental health, starting to have some self-evaluations about how we approach individuals or even our loved ones that could be living with mental health challenges. Also, talk openly about mental health, sharing our stories, what has helped, what has not helped within the community. And a major thing is acceptance of mental health and coming against discrimination and stop limiting possibilities on individuals that's living in, even the people who are caretakers of individuals living with mental health concerns. So in recognizing barriers that comes with mental health challenges, we need to begin to start recognizing it and looking at the things that impact it. Like, for instance, the lack of resources that are within the African American communities. Also, the lack of knowledge regarding the diagnosis, the medication, the treatment that goes with individuals with mental health challenges. Also, viewing misconceptions of what mental health looks like. You know, it's not a face to mental health. Anybody can be impacted by mental health. Any cultural, ethnicity, it doesn't matter. Whatever the socioeconomic status, it doesn't make a difference. It does not discriminate. We can also avoid not having those conversations, you know, start having those brave conversations and no longer running from those conversations. We also can start recognizing barriers to treatment. Another barrier is the distrust of the mental health care system. Who can I trust? Also, there's a lack of diversity in the providers of racial, ethnic backgrounds. There's also lack of insurance, of people being underinsured. And it's also the COVID-19 pandemic, in which fear and anxiety has been reported to be increased, not only in those individuals with mental health, but also with just individuals in period, in general. But it was a study that was conducted that shows even those with mental health illness between the months of May
through July also increased a larger amount of fear and anxiety, even during the COVID pandemic, and due to social distancing, that they began to not go in to utilize the treatment as well.
So, what are some steps to break barriers? One, we can educate ourselves and others. We could utilize various training courses and train our school staffs. We can promote social inclusion and recovery. We remove judgment. Do a lot of reading and researching on barriers. And utilize community resources such as 211, your local helplines, and ask plenty of questions.
All right, guys. So now we would like to introduce a very intimate discussion that we had with Ms. Tara Thomas in regards to stigma and barriers in the mental health care system.
This is take one. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Brantley, and I am a certified family partner with the Harris Center.
I am Rolanda Flakes. I'm a lead peer with the Harris Center as well.
And today we are here with Tara Thomas. We're just going to be interviewing. The topic today is recognize and address the stigma that creates barriers to education within the African American community. All right. So, Ms. Tara, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
Good to be here. Thank you all.
So we just want to get the conversation going with these barriers. But first, can you give us a little background on your experience in dealing with mental health?
Well, it goes all the way back to when my son Christopher was in first grade. He's 21 now, so that was years ago.
Okay, that's been a while.
I was laid off from my job. We were in private therapy.
Mhm.
And so I was laid off from my job and my insurance was gonna lapse. And so I needed him to continue with his medication.
Okay.
And I was just needing medicine.
Mhm.
I didn't know anything else, just medicine. And so a friend of mine told me about MHMRA.
Okay.
And so I took him to MHMRA, and that's where I learned of the services that came along with medication. I didn't know about skills, training. I didn't know any of that stuff until I came to MHMRA, which is now the Harris Center.
Okay. And let me ask you, Sarah. So, in Christopher being diagnosed, did you know? Were you educated on his diagnosis? Was this foreign to you? Was this something that you knew about?
It was foreign because previously with the pediatrician and the therapist, Christopher was only diagnosed with ADHD. So when I was told, as years went by, and he was displaying more manic behaviors and doing other things and hospitalized a few times, that's when his diagnosis was upgraded. And when it was upgraded to something I considered severe, what child in the 5th grade is diagnosed with bipolar disorder and psychosis? That's like serious.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I heard those words that I started reading up on it and asking more questions. Because the Harris Center, the MHMRA did not diagnose him as
Okay.
it was when he was hospitalized.
And in that, did you know where to find? Did you know, just being in the African American, community, did you know where to go to get those
No,
resources?
that's not even, it's unheard of in the African American community. And to be honest, I didn't even really talk about it amongst my family or my peers. I never really talked about it because it was embarrassing. And the few people that did know told me I was tripping. For lack of a better word. You're tripping. Don't let them tell you that something's wrong with him.
So you was already experiencing some form of stigma,
Right.
either self-stigma within yourself or the stigma that those that you was going to for support
Right.
was placing on the matter and the situation as well.
Right. And I also didn't want to, as a parent, I took being a mother serious. And I felt like I didn't want to lose control, if that makes sense. And no, not on my watch. He's not going to be medicated. You know, he's not going to, we're not going to be.
So you had
crazy.
stigmas behind medication.
Self-stigma a lot for myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And not only myself, but family members. You know, you know.
Did you have any issues recognizing those stigmas, that they were there? Did you recognize that, you know, certain people or that you yourself put a stigma on Christopher's diagnosis?
And a barrier.
Yeah, very much so. I recognize it because there were certain things I wasn't going to do. You know, there were certain things, even when it came to him being hospitalized the first time. The first time he was hospitalized, Christopher, he jumped off a school bus, the moving school bus. The school bus was driving down the street and he went out of the emergency exit of the school bus. And so the school then in turn told me that he needed to be hospitalized. Hospitalized meant, you know, in my mind, that's white walls, padded walls, straight jackets. You know what I mean?
That's all you knew.
That's all I thought about.
Which is another form of stigma.
Right.
Did they elaborate?
No. You just, because you don't go past these doors, so you don't know what you're leaving your child in. But the first time he was hospitalized, oh, that was the end of the world for me. I was the worst mom in the world. How can I let this happen to him? And it wasn't going to ever happen again. I think I wanted to pick him up early.
Okay. So at what point in your journey, Sarah, that you sharing with us that you were able to not only recognize the stigma and the self-stigma and the barriers to his treatment, when were you able to recognize that and say something has to change with me?
Oh, that came a number of years later, actually. Because I felt like if I just keep on doing what I'm supposed to do, take him to the doctor and, make sure he's seeing his caseworkers and everything, that was enough. It wasn't until Christopher, his very first attempt at suicide, where he almost completed suicide. It wasn't until then, when his life was hanging in the balance, that I said, okay, enough is enough. What can I do to, change the way things are going? Because this was when he really, really, I remember him telling me that the only way out of this thing, out of being bipolar and, was death. That's the only way I can get out of it. And so I needed to change my thinking and some of the things that I was doing. I was a blueprint for Chris. And a lot of his behaviors I feel like they came from the environment that he lived in. And I'm not saying we didn't come from the bad part of town. It was the inside of the home, the toxicity inside the home, to me, that was feeding Christopher.
And you said something as you were speaking. It's like you had to come to that awareness, and you was the blueprint for him. And we sort of kind of using your story, if you don't mind me saying, as a blueprint to kind of educate the audience and people that will be reviewing this interview. So with that in mind, what would you encourage the individuals, families that are listening to you now coming in from hearing your story about the stigma and the self-stigma that you experienced personally and from others, and then years laughing before you came to that awareness with to educate yourself because your son no longer wanted to live.
Well, I always encourage people to ask questions, speak up. Like if something's going on, speak up because you never know who else has gone through what you're going through or who else can help you. Don't be opposed to the help that's out there. I feel like we all have suffered mentally at some point. You know what I mean? At some point, whether it's small or large. But be open to information. And most of all, do your own research. Like I was always I'm not gonna just take what the doctor said and run with it. I need to do my own research, recognize signs in Chris. You know what I mean? And then ultimately I had to change my language, I had to change my mindset, I had to change my thinking as a whole in order to see progress in not I'm not gonna say just in him, just in the whole situation, period.
That's good. And what about the self-stigma that you was struggling with initially? How were you able to overcome that? Or is that something that can be overcome?
With the self-stigma, I had to literally, how can I say it for people to understand? Literally, like, get naked, if that makes sense. That makes sense? It does. Like, you have to literally just take everything and go to the core. You have to go to the core, right? I had to evaluate, like I said earlier, myself. I had to evaluate the home that I lived in, the relationships that I was a part of, and I had Christopher, the people that I had around, and energy. I had to like really like dig into, okay, you know, what can I do to change this? Because this, not only just for Christopher, but for Christopher's kids, for Christopher, for my other sons, I needed to change and be educated because I had other family members growing up who had some of the same issues that Christopher did, but we overlooked them. The adults in my family overlooked them. Christopher, I was not going to overlook his situation. You know, my sister had an issue. My mother overlooked, and my mother has passed, and my sister still has those same issues and has never been diagnosed and never been. So I did not want that for Christopher. I wanted to make sure that Christopher had the tools because I'm not going to always be here. So I need for you to have the tools and be educated on your diagnosis, be educated on therapy, be educated on what we can do to help because you may have this for the rest of your life. So you need to be able to manage. You know what I mean? I used to always say, Mama, he used to say, Mama, why I gotta take these pills or whatever? I used to always say, it's like kind of like having high blood pressure, right? You have to manage that high blood pressure. You can live through it, you know what I mean? But you have to manage it and make sure you're eating right and doing all that stuff. So it's all about managing that. And I just wanted to make sure that he knew that this wasn't the end all be all.
I know one of the things we're focusing on as that stigma that's with African American youth that's from educators within the school system. Was that something that was a challenge or a concern that you experienced in your journey with your son, Christopher?
The challenge for Chris was because he attended the inner city school, and so the schools assumed that Christopher was from that area. He wasn't from the area. I worked in the school district. That's how he got to the school. And I wanted to be close to him. And so they assumed because of the area that the school was in, which it became the low income area, they assumed that this is where he's from. And this is the behaviors that he showed, it's because he's one of those kids. So when I started visiting the school more and they really got to know me and they could see that I was very well educated. I knew the proper language. I knew what to say. And I knew what my son deserved. It wasn't until then they were like, okay, and they treated me a whole lot different than they treated other parents in the school, and I noticed that.
So that's like a dual stigma,
right?
From one level of stigma to one extreme of stigma to another extreme.
Right.
Of stigma.
They treated me so much different. Christopher would do things. He would show behaviors that another child would get expelled from school or kicked out of school for. But because they knew me and had such a oh my God, they held me to such a high standard. Oh, they just loved me, and they knew I would drop everything and come. Well, Miss Thomas, we'll just send him home for the day, and you bring him back tomorrow. They did not discipline him like they would discipline another student, and because of that, Christopher used that to his advantage.
It helps him create a barrier.
Right. He used that to his advantage, and he knew he could get away with a lot more.
So I guess my question is, for a parent or a loved one, as you have experienced, already coming in with the stigma and a barrier of attending a lower income and into the school, having to come in with that stigma, and then being transparent in who you are and caring for your son as a parent, and you open up to them, then it transitions to another form of stigma.
Right.
What would you encourage a family, a loved one, or individual that's listening today on being able to identify when stigma still exists and it just changes, well, I could say colors?
Well, the way I did when I identified it, I said something about it.
Good.
There was one time where I was at a school, and I saw them treating a parent a certain way that I knew wasn't right. Their child had done something similar to what Christopher did, and I spoke on it, not in front of that parent. I went and talked to the at that time it was an assistant principal. And I noticed, and I told them, I said, I noticed you treat me a lot different than you treat other parents. Oh, well, Miss Thomas, we just don't want you to have to go through some of the things, like going down to the police station and doing all that. We don't want you to have to experience that. But that parent experienced it. And I really felt like I was getting the short end of the stick. Because that, you know what I mean? I don't have a problem. I know that one day that Christopher is going to have to go downtown. You know what I mean? He's going to have to answer for a lot of his actions. And I don't want my child treated any different than another parent. What makes me better than that parent? You know what I mean? And I had to really, really speak on that. And I actually got a chance to go to board meetings and all that. And I expressed that to the school, to the board. Like I need for my son, he's like my son, I need for him to answer for his actions. Because regardless of his diagnosis, I used to tell Chris this all the time, regardless of your diagnosis, there's a floor for you downtown. There's a floor. They're going to give you your medication and tell you to go back. And mama's not going to be able to come pick you up every time. Right.
And then it also sounds like you were basically that same way that the school educated you on things that you could do that you wanted to see
I wanted to see it happen for all the parents. And so when that's when, Christopher was a patient here, I would go to PTO meetings and tell other parents about
Moving on to educate.
So you did get to share your
I
story.
did. I shared my story. I share my story all the time before I became an employee of the agency. And so when the opportunity came for me to gain employment here, I was like, no, but then thinking about it, I could better serve people when I'm on the inside. You know what I mean?
Right.
If that makes sense. I can better serve people. So once I got a position here, I was then asked to come to schools. I was able to go to a few schools, and during Teacher in Service Day, and talk to teachers
And
educate them on my kids and kids like mine, and how I felt they should treat them, address them, and identify them. Don't automatically assume this is just, he just mad.
So that was a form of coming against stigma.
Yeah.
Demystifying the stigma.
Right.
Yes. Within the schools.
And after, talking to them, they appreciated that. You know what I mean? Not only did I educate them on how to identify children like mine and how to deal with them, because I used to say, don't automatically assume that those children come from, a bad background. Don't automatically assume everything is good with them either. You know what I mean? Get to know your kids individually.
So what would you say to some of those educators that's in different positions, superintendents and different positions within the school system now that could be watching this video when it comes to barriers and stigma?
Like I said earlier, you just let's not assume that there's no issues. Let's not assume that there's no issues, but let's not assume that everything is okay to ask questions. Like I said, teachers, get to know your students individually. Let the parents, as a parent, I used to go to the school and tell them, this is going, I used to be honest, very transparent. This is going on in the home. This is going on. Christopher did come from a very toxic home life. There was abuse in the home, and I was very transparent with the school. This is what's going on. Basically asking for help that they didn't give me, but so educators, be willing to help and notice when something is wrong,
And before we end, and that's a good point. So just kind of doing a little role play from an educational standpoint. We're busy. We have so many children that we have to attend to on a daily basis and get our work done and do X, Y, Z that comes with it. We don't have time.
That's not a good excuse for me, because as in the role that I play, I feel like it was a calling for me. I feel like as an educator, that should be a calling for you, right? So make time.
And partner with individuals who will dedicate their time to come in
and learn the resources that's out there.
Yes,
and when parents or individuals, when they come in and say, hey, this is going on, or when you notice something, here's this resource. And not only give them the resource, follow up on if they utilize the resource. Well, if you haven't utilized the resource, what can we do to get you there? Don't just identify a problem and take your hand off and say, okay, well, I pushed them over here. Follow through, and that lets a parent know that you're really concerned or you really care about the situation. Follow through. Just show compassion, man. I tell people this all the time. Compassion and empathy is what did my pastor say the other day? He said it's certification, as a qualification, it's a credential. You know what I mean? It's a credential. And it doesn't take a lot to have compassion and empathy. It just takes an open heart. So just show compassion to everybody that you come in contact with, especially our kids. They really need it.
Well, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for your time and everything that you shared. It's been a wonderful experience
for having me.
listening to you. And I really hope somebody really receives something from what you've shared. I know I have.
Yes,
definitely. Thank you so much for sharing.
So resources. Resources include your local directory. You can contact 211. You can contact your insurance providers. You can contact the Harris Center Crisis Hotline at 713-970-7520. And then, of course, your local mental health authorities. And also for additional resources, refer to our profiles.
All right, guys, that's going to conclude our presentation for today. So any questions?
Awesome. Well, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Let's start our Q&A session. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. If you'd like to speak, you can raise your virtual hand. You'll be unmuted so you can share. And remember to put any questions for our presenters in the Q&A in Hoover. So now help me welcome live Relisha, Rolanda, and Tara. Let's give a virtual applause. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rolanda.
Hey, I'm Tara.
Hello, I'm Felicia.
We're having some technical difficulties.
So let's get started with the questions. We do have some. So how can parents who have a child with an IEP, an individual education plan, or 504 ensure that their child is receiving the proper resources and services within the public school system and not continually getting the runaround?
I think I answered this earlier. And I was saying, just stay proactive in their education. And understand what's in the IEP and the 504. If you don't have an understanding, get one. Don't stop asking questions.
And make sure you educate yourself. What's the difference between a 504 plan and a child falling under the special education umbrella? There's a difference. You have to, be educated, and don't hesitate to ask the school for support and help. If you don't understand, ask, educate yourself, talk to other parents, get involved. A lot of schools have different programs for children with type of mental health issues and disabilities. So just ask questions. You have to continuously ask questions. You have to educate yourself. Even with myself and Tara, we're family partners, and this is what we do to help other families, but we continuously educate ourselves.
Right.
We constantly learn different things as we attend our meetings with our families, as I still attend with my daughter. It's a constant learning process. It never stops.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, from a stigma perspective, speak about how it would be or have been if the parent present is male. Also, how this would be if the male was the recipient of the services.
If it was a male, that's a
Tough one.
if it's a male, that's a real tough question. I would, men, I think they might get a little bit more respect than a woman, because they come in, hopefully, strong and confident
and you know, they have a presence. So a lot of times it's unfortunate, but a lot of these households don't come with a male parent. So as a single mom, when I was doing it, yeah, I had to be a little tough, well, a lot tough, and don't have a problem with it.
And a male child. So my experience with this, when I was married and me and my husband were going through this this new encounter with our daughter, he wasn't educated on what was going on with her. During the meetings, he didn't understand what the difference was, or why is it that, you know, he felt like our daughter was being singled out. So with my experience, he wasn't really educated on it. He didn't believe that there was a problem with our daughter. It was kind of almost a denial. So it was hard for them to reach him, or for him to even understand what was fully going on with her. I think for any parent, whether it be male or female, as long as you educate yourself and you come in knowing what you're talking about in regards to your children, you know what the rights are, you know what the school can and cannot do, you know what you can and cannot do for your child, what you can request, the different services that are available. The schools know. They know when you're educated on the process. They know when you know what you're talking about, when you go in there, and they know if you don't know.
It's important that when there is a two-parent household, they both be on the same page.
Yes. It's imperative.
That's the most important thing. You don't want to go into a school without being united. So mom and dad need to have that same understanding, because when the schools, I feel, when they see it's off, you know, they're going to run with that. So you want to make sure both parents, whether they're in the same household or not, everybody's on the same page and educated in what's in that IEP and 504 and the plan of care.
Get to know what the accommodations are. Research beyond the basic accommodations. Because we know they'll do preferential seating. We know that. We know that they'll extend testing time, but do you know that they'll chunk work? They'll limit how much they give them, where Billy may have, 50 questions and the rest of the class may have 80.
Right.
Learn what those accommodations and modifications are unique to your child's education plan, because that's exactly what it is. A 504 is accommodations, and an IEP provides modifications where they will teach your child the way that they learn.
Right. And make sure not only that you and mom and dad are educated, but educate that child. It's important that the child knows about the IEP and 504, what's in place for them, what they can ask for. Over the years, over time, we outgrow a lot of our accommodations. So it's okay to say, hey, we need to come back and revisit the plan, because he either needs more or we need to make some changes.
And
annually.
No, you can do it before annually.
Okay. Right. You can come in at any time and ask
to be reviewed.
During the middle of the school year,
IEP to be reviewed again.
During the middle of the school year. And an example of mine, a personal example, when my daughter started virtually, the 504 coordinator called me and she was like, okay, what changes would you like to make? I had no idea. And I do this every day as my job. I was like, I don't know. And here we go, months later, I called her back and I'm like, okay, now I see what we need to change, because the setting has changed. It's different. The way she's learning is different. The way she's not as receptive. So we went back and we went over those things and it was no problem. A lot of parents don't know that you don't have to wait every 3 years to have your child evaluated, for special education. That those full testings can be done again per your written request by law.
Okay, another question is, in practice, local schools seem to be clueless when it comes to resources for mental health. How can we build capacity within the school district to address mental health?
Bring it to the forefront, ask questions. As parents, it's our job to make sure that the school knows. I remember when my son was coming to the Harris Center to get his services, the schools didn't like the social worker or caseworker coming into the school to apply the skills. And some schools out here in Houston don't allow that. But as a parent, it was my job to go in there and advocate for him to get those services inside the school. So we as parents, I'm gonna keep saying this, we have to stay on top of the schools and make sure that they're providing the services for our kids. So we have to stay proactive. We have to stay on them and make noise. I believe in making noise. You're gonna know me, you're gonna see me all the time, and you're gonna hear my mouth. Right. And if the school is not providing what you need, you can always go to the district. The districts that my son was in, they had a meeting once a week, a board meeting once a week where parents can come in. It was a public meeting. Parents can come in. I didn't have a problem going to the district and letting them know, hey, I need this to go on inside of the school. If they didn't have a program, we're gonna have to come up, get together and figure out programs that are gonna help not only my son, but kids like him, because he's not the only one.
And just to add to that, another thing for me, and I know it sounds repetitive, but educate yourself. When I first had my daughter tested under the special education umbrella, they put me in a group email with other parents with children with special needs. They have meetings at the school. Had she never been tested, I would have never known. So it's just, being educated, asking questions. Hey, do you guys have any type of support for parents? I found just in talking to my daughter's teachers that, a couple of her teachers have children with mental health diagnoses. So they were able to understand and relate to me. Yeah, and being open, like Rolanda said, letting them know what's going on with your child, because every child is different. Every child has, individual needs, and that's the whole point of the IEP. Just being vocal, advocating on behalf of your child. Like Tara said, with my daughter, me and my husband, we made sure that we educated her on her diagnosis, that she knew what was going on with her. We let her know what was in her IEP, what was in her education plan, so she would know if the teachers were providing it or not. Allowing your child to attend the art. A lot of parents don't do that. Well, how would you know that the teacher is not doing these things, or is, if Billy is not allowed to come, and be present
and speak up for himself? He needs to be able to speak up for himself, and that's a forum where you can give him the floor so he can say, hey, this is working, this is not working. And as parents, we know what it takes for our child to be successful. A lot of times, and excuse me if it's educators on this call, but a lot of times the schools just like us to go along to get along. They like to tell us what our child needs, and I feel like I know best. I know best of what my child needs. So everybody needs to come to the table. Administrators, counselors, teachers, myself, everybody that's involved with him or her, they need to come to the table, and everybody needs to mutually agree on how we're gonna ensure that he or she is successful. So it's just, like I said, make noise.
Do random meetings.
Pop up.
Yes. Build a rapport with the teachers. I found that has helped me tremendously. Even with my daughter, getting to know her principal and her knowing me on a personal level, knowing that, look, I don't, it's not okay that she has these behaviors, but it's for a reason. It's something that's out of her control. Know that I'm working with you and not against you. Just building those relationships, letting the school staff know that you are working with them and not against them.
And then most importantly, talk to the child. Ask him or her what it is you can do to help them. What can I do for you? Talk to them, because sometimes we look over them and we don't even get their voice and what they need. So talk to the child. They know, they can understand when it's about them, and they can ask, hey, ask, everybody that's involved with them for what they need. So that's always important. always make sure the child is involved.
Yes, that's right, and that's awesome. In fact, that's one of the comments that someone put in Hoover, and I'll just
Right.
go with the second part of it. Even if they go to college, they can ask for modifications for testing and other needs through
Definitely.
job support programs like workforce. And then another person said, speak your voice, even if it shakes. Others are saying that this is very important information to know. And that you're doing a great job and they're enjoying this presentation. I think you might also be seeing some of these comments, and I like to share some of them for those that may not be in Hoover, those that might be on Facebook. These are some of the things that people are saying, parents are speaking up, just as, that we're hearing today from our presenters. And the other thing I'll say, and then I believe there's a hand raised here, being asked to pick your child up is a form of shadow discipline that is not fully documented. The number of times children with disability and people of color are excluded from education.
Right. And if I could speak to that, picking them up, you don't have to pick them up. It is the school's job to make sure that child is getting educated for those 8 hours a day. If they're just calling you to pick him up because he's talking too much or he's doing, if it's not something that's for me, life or death, or he's, getting suspended or whatever, you don't have to pick them up. A lot of the times at school, because they don't feel like it, oh, you're going to have to come pick up little John, because he's just not having a good day. No, you can say, no, I'm not coming to pick him up. Like I said, unless he's drawing blood, no, I'm not coming. I'm not coming. So, and is the school making sure that they've gone through that IEP or, the accommodations before they call you and call you to pick him up?
And another thing that they can do, because if they have accommodations, they have a counselor, and they can have a time set up that when they having, say, some discipline challenges, that they can have a place to go to, or they can have that alone time, that space time, or that time for counseling or redirecting and restructuring so they can be successful. So those are some of the things we've been working with as a provider when I work with high schoolers, especially with early onset of psychosis, that we make sure that the families know how to work with the school staff to make sure that these accommodations go past what's taking place inside of the classroom, but to make sure that that child have a successful school day, with not having to be sent home for every little bitty thing. What other ways they can be redirected while in school? What other supports systems can be put in place? So definitely speak your voice and ask what can be done.
And I see somebody on here said, Lenora said that she still uses them as a graduate on her graduate college level. Yes.
Yes.
Know that those accommodations follow you even to college. So when you're college age, you have to know what your accommodations, what your IEP says. My son, when he went to college, he struggled that first semester, but he knew, oh, wow, I can go to my academic counselors and say, hey, I was in a special education program all through, school, and I had an IEP in place. I had accommodations in place. I need for those same accommodations to work for me, even at the college level. So again, that goes to teaching the child how to advocate for themselves, because as parents, we're not going to always be there. So they need to know what it is that can help them be successful. So that's good, Lenora.
They know that, because a lot of colleges are not educating them other benefits that they have. So even working with adults, I work with transition age youth and adults, and this is one of the things I educate them on, and working with them on the self-stigma and the barriers that goes with them, and helping them to understand the importance of them going to their ABA counselor and put that those accommodations in place so they can be successful.
Well, thank you. We apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties and that's related to sound. So thank you for your patience and bearing with us. We have another question, is that I'm a social worker at an elementary school. What can we do to support parents?
What can you do as a social worker? Ask questions. I feel like we see when there's a child that has issues, and because of the climate that we live in, sometimes we get scared to speak up on behalf of that child. Speak up. If you see something, ask questions. I get it, some of us aren't approachable, if that makes sense, but figure out a way to approach the parent and or the teacher. But if you see something, it's okay to speak up on it.
I'll get some support with other staff to have a
Right.
conversation with the parent, or even find out what the school can do as a staff, like a resource to the community, like a talk day about mental health, or something that the school can do to make the families aware that this is something that they're willing to support the families in. So I think it's going to take a collaborative effort from the school and from the families. And because of stigma and a lot of things that people have endured over time, trust is an issue.
Right.
So it's hard for them to trust that the school system is going to be genuine and has their best interest at heart. So I think it's going to take a collaboration on both the parent and the school.
Right. And then don't go on that with judgment. That's huge. As parents, we, we're always thinking that people are judging us based on our, where we live,
How we parent.
how we look, all of that. So don't go.
The child's behavior.
The child's behavior speaks on a lot. We automatically assume because
Let's get it from his mama.
he cuss a lot. Excuse me, they not taking care of him well over there, or so just non-judgmental. Make sure you keep your opinions, your facial expressions to yourself.
And then I'd like to add to that. My suggestion as a social worker with the school, just kind of, going hand in hand with the things I've experienced, just not to treat each situation the same. Everything is not textbook. It's just not. Yeah, you just have to know that each family has their unique, things going on. The child has unique, things going on with them, and it's not the same. Just to, kind of keep those type of things in mind, that every situation is different, and just do your best to work with a parent where, because I know just from my own experience, I know I could have come off, like Tara said, a little harsh, but, I had the best interest, and I was overwhelmed as a parent, just continuously being called all day long. It wasn't that I didn't want to offer my support and that I didn't want to work with the school. I was frustrated. Right. I was trying to figure out what I can do and what I should do. I had a lot on my plate. I was, burdened with, should I medicate my child? Knowing that a lot of these medications shorten the lifespan. I was, thinking about 504 and trying to read a thick booklet and find out everything about what it meant to be on a 504 plan, or what was offered to a child with special education needs. So, just as a parent, I was going through a lot. And I did have, staff at my daughter's school that understood it, and I had a lot that didn't. So just, just looking at each situation. Yes. Very important.
And as an educator, if they don't have programs in your schools that help administration understand children with special needs, and ask for it. When they have their teacher in-service days, or their administration, the in-service days, I feel like that should be something that they should visit, because a lot of the school, especially with COVID-19, y'all, I'm not gonna start preaching. In the climate that we're living in, everybody is going through a traumatic experience. everybody, we all are. And so everybody, we all, especially when we're teaching teaching the kids, we need to have that training on how to deal with traumatic behaviors. Children don't know how to express themselves verbally all the time. So it comes out through their behaviors. So like we said earlier, don't just assume that he's bad or she's bad or she, you know, there sometimes it has something to do with something that they've either gone through or they're going through presently. So and just compassion and empathy is everything. If you lack that, then you don't need to be around kids. I'm sorry, but I get passionate about this. But always have that compassion and empathy component.
And patience is going to be key. You know, we're dealing with parents and kids. Even in our field, we deal with a lot of parents that are not educated. But that does not mean that they don't want the best education for their children. A lot of them just don't know what to ask for or what the child needs. They just know that they need help.
Right.
So I would just end it with patience.
Sorry, we said too much.
Oh, so awesome, you all. Wow. Wow, you all rock.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Powerhouse is in the house. So another question, what stigmas have you experienced, if any? What stigmas have you experienced, if any?
Yeah, we're asking the people. You name it. For me, I've like I said, I talked about in the video, because of the area of town that the school was located in, they assumed that, which was close to you know, the low income communities, the projects, that's what we call it down here in Houston. So they assumed that that's the area that my child came from. And I'm not gonna lie, he act like he, you know, his behaviors mimicked those. And so they automatically assume without having a conversation with me. But over time, once I started making myself known throughout the schools and showing my face more and letting them know that I was proactive, I actually worked for the district, things changed for me. But it didn't change for some of the rest of the parents who were still being judged for whatever reason. So those are a lot of the stigma. Stigma for myself. I didn't talk about what my child was doing or what I was going through. I was embarrassed because I felt like I didn't have control over, you know, over certain situations. So I didn't talk about it. I didn't want people to look at me a certain way. So I had to learn and educate myself and get connected with people who worked in, you know, at the mental health authority and ask questions and understand that it's okay to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. My child has lives with a diagnosis. Talk about it, because you never know who is going through the same thing that you're going through. And you can, talking to a parent, they're like, ooh, they start breathing a little a little easier because they know that somebody is going through the same thing that they're going through, and they understand exactly what they're going through. It's hard, especially when you can't discipline your kids a certain way. And children are different. Y'all know what I'm saying? They different from how we were 20 years ago. So parents feel like their hands are tied. So we have to help them understand the discipline practices that are out here. You don't always have to put your hands on your kids. A lot of times they just need understanding, meet them where they are. And so, like I said, it's just about talking. I mean, opening, voicing, letting people know, the right people know what you're going through.
That's wonderful. So we're going to be closing shortly, you all. So if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. You'll be allowed to speak. You'll be unmuted and then able to speak. Also, still, you can put questions in the Q&A box. And there is one question. Were there any barriers pertaining to resources that you experienced?
Yeah.
Let me chime in on this one.
Okay.
Chime in on this one. Actually, so I don't work as a family partner, but I'm definitely certified to be one. So when I was going through it with my youngest son, and he had been in treatment as my my guide as a mother for him when he turned 17, and he was struggling on his own, and he made his last attempt to go for help on his own, and he was definitely a heavy marijuana user because that's what he did to self-medicate. So on his last draw, I say, okay, Mom, I'm gonna try this one more time to see what he says. These people gonna help me because his thing is these people don't care about me. And so when he went in for his evaluation, and he was honest and say, yes, I use marijuana. I use it to self-medicate. It keeps me calm because at the time he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And they stopped his evaluation and told him they pretty much couldn't help him because he needed to stop using the marijuana. And when he stopped using the marijuana, then he can come back for a reevaluation. But that was his problem. And to this day, my son still will not go for help because that is implanted in his heart, and he just lost all trust and hope into the system. So I was trying to advocate for him and to encourage him, but personally it impacted him so that he lived with that self-stigma that nobody helps, nobody wants to help, and don't nobody care. And he would never, at this point, he was like, he would never go back for the assistance and the help. So stigma can be very damaging to some individuals.
Right.
So as a provider, I work diligently with my families and the individuals that we serve to help them overcome stigma and to push past stigma, to become educated and to advocate for themselves. Because I live with it every day when I see my son still struggling and still feeling like it's still no one there to help him. Although he know I'm in the field and some people get help, but he's still kind of traumatized from that last experience that he had.
Well, thank you. Thank you all very much. This has been absolutely amazing. I would like to thank Relisha, Rolanda, and Tara for sharing their knowledge and insight with us. And many, many thanks to all of you for joining us today. Please take a few minutes to complete the workshop survey. It helps us to know how we're doing. If you are seeking CEUs, remember that your forms will be in the survey. The links are in the chat. So thanks again, you all. Please stay safe. And we were so honored to have you all today. We look forward to seeing you for the next session. Take care. Have a safe evening.
Thank you.
You're
Y'all have a
welcome.
good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.